If human experiments were made legal, what would scientists first experiment about? I imagine some sociologists would really like to pull a Lord of the Flies type thing where you remove a dozen kids from civilization and see how they adapt. A king did this in the old days way back when his own word was law. He had children raised feral to see what would happen to them. The guy I heard about was Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II that did this. But upon a Google search you can find more as well. Pharaoh Psamtik I of Egypt and King James IV of Scotland are noted. And? Don't leave us hanging, I'm curious now. Brain transplants are the ability to transfer someone's consciousness. The day we figure out what consciousness truly is and how to transfer it is the day we defeat death. Put me in a giant robot body. I am all for it. I would pay to watch the brainbots fight each other. Stem cells and cancer treatment. You ever seen the movie The Island where people are birthed just to donate their organs to rich people? Sorta like that, but we don't actually need to have another human just grow the organ in an incubator. I think they've already started growing spare human parts on pigs or mice. Imagine a person whose sole job is growing extra kidneys in his own body for transplant. Or extra ears all over his belly. Aesthetical genetic engineering. Seeing how much people request it. If ethics is completely thrown out the window, I have no doubt in my mind that the first research that governments sponsor is genetically engineering super soldiers. It's very likely been happening in China for years. Source: 2 degrees in biotech. Another source: lol. Human nature outside of civilization. If you mean outside of city village life, there are still some nomadic hunter-gatherer groups to study. If you mean outside of social groups entirely, then it's not human nature you're interested in. Human nature essentially involves being in groups, just like wolves or lions or ants or any other social creatures. Take a group of kids with no memories yet, from different cultures and backgrounds. Put them all together with no adult influence and see how they turn out. If a transgender person was raised in isolation only by robots having never seen the opposite sex, would they have the compulsion to transition, and if so, transition into what? How could you tell someone is transgender before they were raised? Since all ethical gloves are off, find a transgender person. Clone them. Boom. You have a baby soon to be transgender person. That is, if we can trust the science behind the idea that the condition is biological and not something learned imparted. Of course, maybe that's the point of the experiment in the first place. Gene editing to the point of being able to produce newborns with specific cosmetic and mechanical traits with near 100% precision. Basically designer babies. Very morally questionable. But imagine being able to prevent all genetic diseases, disorders in all future humans. Even having them born without appendixes and wisdom teeth. That or make real monster girls for the weebs. The appendix is actually a useful organ. Someone won a Nobel Prize for discovering that it keeps bacteria to repopulate your body after an infection. Edit. After looking back, I see no prize awarded for this. Well, duck. Wish someone told mine that before it tried killing me and then getting removed. Dano ask China. First you make really good basketball player. Then superhumans for your army. Then animal human hybrids as another branch in that army. Then when you're bored, funniest looking humans. So, most RPG game characters with character generators? First, some health preventative measures. Want a baby that we guarantee won't have these terrible genetic defects that you have a chance of passing on? Done. Then aesthetic changes. Want a blonde hair, blue-eyed kid? Or shall we go brown hair, brown eyes to make sure your kid doesn't have the traits of their actual father? Done. Then physical advantage changes. Want us to add the stamina of one race and height of another race? Done. After decades of this, rich people will use genetic experimentation and modifiers to clearly define their children as rich from birth. Like born with specific birth markings. Or wings. Who knows? Yep. Babies would be modified quickly. Rich people would spare little expense to make sure their single offspring would be the smartest, prettiest, and strongest baby they could produce. Clones. Edit. Thank you guys so much. I have never got that much upvotes on anything. A clone of yourself would make it a lot easier to suck your own dong. Imagine waking up alone on an operating table. You open your eyes. You're confused. Naked. Alone. What happened? How did you get here? Was there some sort of terrible accident? Then an exact duplicate of yourself walks in the room. He looks at you. He's also naked, but has a huge erection. What's going on? You ask. Lol, you're a clone I made to give myself blowjobs. Open your mouth. They are. They test new drugs on human tissue than mouse. Monkey than human. Plus psychology experiments are done every day. Experimentation. Per se. Is not bad. It just got a bad name. OP probably means the unethical human experimentation that violate medical ethics. Putting a child in a giant inflatable ball. Periodically poking it with a stick to disprove the hypothesis that it would grow up to ducking hate them. Some children ducking hate you even if you give them the wrong cereal in the morning. My daughter is a sweetheart. If another kid snatches a toy, she'll barely react. If she gets shoved over, she'll tell them no. I've never seen her fight. She's 3. But one time, one of her grandparents didn't have cornflakes for breakfast. 6 months on, she still hates them and reminds them they have crap breakfast cereals. Her greeting. You bad flakes. Yucky flakes. Nerve regeneration. Could help with many conditions. Like paralysis, deafness, blindness, etc. I had my collarbone plated and screwed with 11 screws after a really bad break. Before the surgery, the doctor told me he would do his best to look for the 5 or so nerve endings that cross that area. But they were very small, and most surgeons just cut right through them. I just said thank you before going under. Afterward, the doc let me know he found 2. But there were definitely more that he couldn't find. Because of this, I couldn't feel any topical pressure applied to the skin surface on my entire chest on the right side and down my arm, stopping halfway between my shoulder and elbow. He told me nerves don't usually grow back and this odd sensation would last for the rest of my time here on Earth. I went on with life and rehab until about 6 months after surgery, when I was walking through campus. Suddenly it felt like someone had poured ice water on my right shoulder. It was so sudden I jumped, screamed, and caused the entire quad to look in my direction. I touched my shoulder, and I could feel part of it again. This sensation happened a couple more times and now I have no loss of feeling in any area of my right shoulder. So odd. Edit. Doing don't and small clarification. A recent study showed that we are capable of growing and replacing neurons by blocking the scaring that happens when damage is occurred. Basically, the brain blocks the path and cuts the damaged piece out of the circuit, but if that is avoided, it can grow new neurons. It's quite recent. Maybe a year ago. Medication for pregnant women. Since fetuses can't give consent for medical trials, it's extremely difficult for doctors to get accurate data regarding the effects to the fetus of various medications and treatments that a pregnant mother may need. In utero genetic modification, the ethics early on are a bit sketchy. But if this stuff actually works, crippling genetic disorders could be all but eliminated within a couple of decades. Granted, that may lead to designer babies. But with a little regulation we should be fine. Psychology would become a lot more precise. And a lot more traumatic for subjects too. So many things. Human growth development is a big one. A lot of experimental data comes from decades ago when human experimentation was more or less legal. I can think of a few specific topics right now. Language acquisition. Infant brain development. Psychosocial development. At what angle do we have to hit someone's elbow to produce electricity? Technically speaking, any angle as long as their nerves work. This sounds like it belongs in r/shitty superpowers LMAO. How many hard-boiled eggs without shell can a person fit up their butt? 9 and 1/3. What species? Honestly, How to make viruses and viral infections more efficient yet controlled. This will make the delivery of genetic treatments more effective. Edit. AAVs exist. I forgot about that. Thanks to those who pointed it out. How to make viruses and viral infections more efficient yet controlled. I thought you were going to go the weaponized Ebola route on that. Does it even need weaponizing? It's dangerous enough as it is. How to grow 2 heads on one body. Men have succeeded at that already. Cat girls when? Hard to make someone believe the whole point of their lives was cause some weeb wanted to have a girlfriend and couldn't find one. Don't underestimate a nerd's drive to get laid but zero time into social skills. Extending lifespan. And extending penis size. We already figured that out. Assuming we just throw all ethics out the window. More child psychology experiments. I'd be curious to know if the Stanford prison experiment carries over to children or if that type of following orders behavior is learned. Yeah. Intentional experiments to work out the best kind of parenting. Plato's Republic style, capturing kids and giving them different kinds of education until you make the perfect ruler. Experiments on identical twins to assess the relationship between nature and nurture. I actually just watched a documentary about this very topic. There was a set of triplets that were split up at birth by an orphanage. Once they found each other and started putting pieces together, they realized that they were not alone. Other twins had also been separated by the same orphanage. The freakiest part was that the homes they went to were homes where the orphanage already had another child placed. They basically controlled the entire family unit without the parents even knowing. Insane. Edit. For those interested. Best comment of the day. The mouse utopia experiment, followed by the rat utopia experiment. The idea was to model the perfect conditions for a select number of healthy mice. They were given an unlimited supply of food, more than enough nesting space, etc. The idea being to model society and get a possible future for human societal development. At first the mice explored the new enclosure and established territories. Then every 60 days the population doubled. At a certain point the population leveled out and expansion stopped. Mice started identifying food and need with the presence of others and began voluntarily overcrowding. The larger the population sizes, the less care mothers gave to their offspring. One group in particular, dubbed the beautiful ones, stopped social interaction. The only thing they did was eat, sleep, and groom themselves 24/7, which seemed to also make them dumber. Many males would attempt to woo a female and get rejected. These mice withdrew into groups that became increasingly violent, first among themselves, then towards others. Shortly after this plateauing period, the population began to drop. Violence spread, reproduction rates dropped, and fewer survived infancy. Eventually all the mice died off. Despite living in perfect conditions, the mice population ended up destroying itself. The rat experiment showed many similarities. The experiment showed that, at least in mice, animals go through set phases of exploration, explosion, plateauing, then a steep decline leading eventually to extinction of the group when placed in ideal living conditions, and the number of parallels between the experiment and that of human growth is concerning.